Hello everyone. We are going to discuss the today's Hindu newspaper that is dated 27/2020. I am Dr. Dilip. And a little bit about our institution. Our institution is situated in Hyderabad and it offers both online and offline coaching. The offline coaching is presently affected with the pandemic of COVID-19, but you can avail the online coaching which is available at a cost of 15,000 rupees only. It will include either you can choose the options of UPSC prelims for 15,000 or APPSC group 2 for 15,000 or TSPSC group 2 for 15,000. You can download our app, that is Vali's the Learning app, on Play Store, and you can reach us at www.valirameshwar'sIasacademy.com, and you can even call us at these numbers if you have any queries. So going into today's newspaper, the first article talks about foreign experts seek to leave Baghjan site. So what is this Baghjan site and why there are foreign experts? And as you know from the past several days, that is roughly in May 27th, there was an blowout at a oil and natural gas field which is situated in Baghjan in the eastern Assam. So this oil field is owned by Oil India Limited. So what is meant by a blowout? So a blowout is an uncontrolled release of oil or natural gas from an oil well or a gas well after pressure control systems have failed. So as you know, during this exploration and then removal of this crude oil or natural gas, naturally when a oil drill is being done or drilling into the earth's surface, because of the natural pressure that is present inside, this crude oil and natural gas will be coming up, gushing out of the earth's crust with a great force. So definitely they will need to have a pressure control systems. So when this pressure control systems have failed, automatically what happens is there will be a blowout. Blowout is nothing but uncontrolled release. So this uncontrolled release of this natural gas along with certain amount of crude oil has happened in one of the oil fields that is called Baghjan site, which is owned by Oil India Limited, but it is given or outsourced to a private entity so that it can carry out this oil and natural gas extraction. But because of this accident that happened, followed by on the 13th day, there was an explosion leading to this natural gas catching fire and burning continuously. So in order to put this fire under control and limit the damage to the environment, different experts from all across the globe were roped in, and 2 people from Singapore were also roped in, and those people were carrying out the work, and now the work is almost done. They are ready to leave, but because of the disaster that has happened, a lot of people who are residing in that area in Assam had lost their area to live, and they have been evacuated to certain safe areas. And as the government couldn't or refused to provide certain compensation to some of the people who are affected by this incident, one of them consumed poison and tried to commit suicide and died. And in this process, the locals have demanded that a good amount of compensation should be given to those individual because he was affected and he has lost his life. So the family should be compensated duly. So in order to win or just negate their demands, they have prevented these foreign experts from moving on. So what is the problem with this natural gas that is being continuously released into the environment? So there is a significant damage to the environment, and when this crude oil is also seeping slowly into the nearby soil and also the water resources, it is contaminating them on a large scale. And here the threat is very severe because very close to this Baghjan site adjoins the Maguri Motapang wetland and also Dibru Shaikova National Park, where a lot of natural which is a natural habitat for a lot of animals and birds. And even the Gangetic dolphin, which is residing in Assam, is also affected. So there have been several pictures that have gone viral on social media showing the death of this Gangetic dolphins. So if you speak about the compensation, so initially the government has thought that the compensation should be given as directed by OIL, but later OIL compensation was stopped and a panel was constituted by NGT so that those panelists can look into the matter and provide how much compensation should be given to the victims of this tragedy. Then moving on to the next topic, UN draft declaration goes soft on demand for reform. So what is this UN draft declaration? So basically India along with certain group of countries is trying to seek a membership, that is permanent membership into the UN Security Council. So if you talk about the UN Security Council, it has permanent members and temporary members. So permanent members are 5 in number, and these 5 include Britain, France, Russia, China, US. Okay, so these are the permanent members. So these permanent members of UNSC have a right that is called veto power, means the ability to reject or accept is called veto power, and the rest of the members who will be elected to this temporary post is varying as per the elected process. But here, because only these 5 countries are enjoying this veto power, India wanted a reform in the UNSC structure so that several developing countries or several countries which are contributing heavily to the United Nations be provided with a permanent member status on par with the 5 permanent members. So these countries which are demanding that a reform should be made and they should be given the permanent membership in the UNSC have together formed something which is called as the G4 countries, and these G4 countries are comprised of Brazil, Germany, India and Japan, and these 4 countries are going to support each other in their bid for permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council, because these countries are significant players in the recent time. So this United Nations Security Council was formed after the end of World War II in order to maintain peace and security in the world. And because these superpowers, these 5 powers were negating or were having much of the say after the World War II, they have been given the permanent membership and they enjoy the veto power. But as the scenario changes, as years have passed, many countries that are developing have assumed greater significance in the world politics, and definitely these countries want the permanent membership. And when these countries like India and all other countries, that is including Brazil and Germany and Japan, have come forward and they have demanded for permanent membership in the UNSC, there are a few group of countries which have demanded that these countries should not be given this permanent membership, and permanent membership should be diluted and every country should be provided an equal say. And those countries together have formed something that is called as Uniting for Consensus or Coffee Club, and this was developed in the 1990s in opposition to the possible expansion of permanent seats in the UNSC under the leadership of Italy, and followed by Pakistan, Mexico and Egypt joining them. And later even Argentina, Turkey, Canada and South Korea have joined, and now this Coffee Club or the Uniting for Consensus roughly has 50 member countries. So despite India's repeated demands for reform of the UN, that is UNSC, so there is no scope that the process can be fastened, and it appears that the process is relatively slower. And this UNSC, which was formed almost 75 years ago, is going to take much time than expected so that its reforms can be implemented. And right now, what are the major areas that UN is going to look to bring reforms into? They are saying that they are going to bring reforms into 3 aspects. One is the UNSC, reform of the United Nations Security Council, and they want to revitalize the General Assembly, that is United Nations General Assembly, and also to strengthen the Economic and Social Council, which is working or which is aimed at working so that the sustainable developmental goals or sustainable development can be achieved. So this is all about this topic. Then moving on, case fatality rate below 2.5% says government. So this case fatality rate, this article talks about the death rate or case fatality rate in relation to the disease of COVID-19. So what is meant by case fatality rate? So if you see the definition, the case fatality rate is a measure of the severity of a disease, and it is defined as proportion of the reported cases of a specified disease or condition which are fatal within a specified time. So if you assume, for you to calculate how the government has come to the calculation of case fatality rate, so you can calculate as case fatality rate is equal to number of deaths. So here case fatality rate of COVID-19 is equal to number of deaths due to COVID-19 divided by total number of cases or infected people with COVID-19 into 100. Whatever number comes, that percent comes, is called as the case fatality rate percentage of COVID-19. So when compared with the world nations, 2.5% is very low, so that is a good case whenever, even though the cases or the number of people infected with the coronavirus is increasing, but still yet the case fatality rate in India is less. So that is very good news. But if you see how that number has come, is what they are telling is India's case fatality rate, that is the number of fatalities due to COVID-19 as a proportion of number of people testing positive, is around fallen below 2.5%. And there are several states that it can be noted that the ministry says 29 states and union territories have a case fatality rate of lower than that of the average of India, which is even 5 of them has less than the Indian average, and 14 of them have less than 1% of case fatality rate. And this is attributed to the several actions taken by the government, that includes the population surveys which have shown that the government has implemented a lot of things, that is encouraging people to maintain social distancing, encouraging people to carry out the use of facial masks, and use of several apps that have been developed by the government, that is including the Arogya Setu app, in order to give information to people about the risk of COVID-19 so that they can be active and informed and they can protect themselves against this COVID-19 infection. Then moving on, DGCI notice to Glenmark over claim on drug. So what is this DGCI, and what notice has been sent to Glenmark, and what claim they have made on the drug, that you have to understand. So here in the topic, only one thing that is important is the Drug Controller General of India, that is DGCI. So what is this Drugs Controller General of India? It comes under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and it is responsible for approval of licenses, that is giving permissions especially for drugs that are related to blood products, IV fluids, vaccine and serum in India. And also it sets standards for manufacturing, sales, import and distribution of drugs in India. So this DGCI has given a notice to Glenmark. So why a pharmaceutical company has been given a notice by DGCI? It is because the Glenmark company recently has finished certain trials and it has received nod from DGCI so that they can release into the market a drug which is called as Favipiravir with a name Fabiflu. So what are the discrepancies with this drug so that it has received a notice? So the discrepancies is that it is said that Glenmark has made false claims. And what are the false claims? It said that it has claimed that if this Fabiflu is used, it can treat COVID along with comorbidities. So what is meant by comorbidities? So comorbidities or comorbidity is a condition that is already associated with an individual. That is, the examples of comorbidities are like blood pressure, high blood pressure, or simply you can call it as hypertension, diabetes mellitus, cardiac disease, and renal disease. All these are considered as comorbidities. Okay, so comorbidities are the diseases which an individual already has, and it is said that the people who have comorbidities and who have also gotten or affected with COVID-19, if they use this Fabiflu, then Glenmark has said that they will be recovering. But that is a false claim, and whatever trials this Glenmark has done, it is not taken into consideration. It has not taken into consideration about the comorbidities during its trial. And another thing is, it is said that Glenmark has increased the price of Fabiflu and has tried to sell it in the market. So taking all those into consideration, the Drugs Controller General of India has given a notice to Glenmark so that it has to explain for its actions. Then moving on to the next topic, domestic firms worried over small arm imports. So what are these domestic firms and what are the small arm imports? So you know that Indian Army is equipped with certain amount of small arms, and those small arms, whatever Indian Army has been using, are called as INSAs. Okay, so INSAS stands for Indian National Small Arms System. Okay, means this Indian National Small Arms Systems have developed certain small arms which have been inducted into the Indian Army. So Indian Army has been using the weapons, small arms that have been developed through this INSAS system. But due to the passage of age, they have become outdated, and Indian Army has been planning that it will induct new type of small weapons into the Army. So for that purpose, what the Army has done is, it has taken a decision of procuring about 72,400 assault rifles from a US based company that is called Sig Sauer. So this US based company is going to provide 72,400 small arms to the Indian Army, and those small arms, whatever that Indian Army is going to get, it is said that even the government coming out with Atmanirbhar Abhiyan and bringing into limelight about Make in India, that whatever that be used by Indians should be manufactured in India itself. But in this aspect of the defense, the local manufacturers are not being given the due weightage as that is being given to the foreign manufacturers. So here the local manufacturers or the domestic firms of small arms have raised their voice, citing that the government, that is the defense ministry, should also take them into consideration so that they will be given due weightage and they can work on par with the international companies, and they can procure only few equipment from outside and the rest can be assembled and manufactured within the country, and that is in lieu with Make in India. So what they are telling is, these domestic firms are small arm firms, and they are telling that they are left out of the defense procurement procedure, which is called as fast track procurement. So what is meant by fast track procurement? Fast track procurement is the procurement of defense equipment whenever there are urgent conditions. So during these urgent conditions, normally by the defense procurement procedure which was set out in the year of 2016, it provides for fast track procurement from both domestic firms and also from international firms. But what the domestic firms are claiming is that the fast track procedure or procurement procedure is only being provided for the international or foreign vendors, but the domestic firms are kept away or kept out from this fast track procurement that is available. So here right now what India is doing is, India is planning to replace the existing INSAS, that is Indian National Small Arms System. You can see here, this is the gun belonging, that is a small arm of Indian National Small Arms System which has developed, and now they want to induct into the army an assault rifle from Sig Sauer, and this assault rifle is this, which is advanced, as you can see in this image. So and the defense ministry has entered into a deal, and the name of that rifle is SIG 716 assault rifle. SIG. So here you can see SIG 716 assault rifle. So this is going to replace the INSAS small arms system. And also India has also had entered into a deal with the other countries so that it will acquire almost the carbines. Carbines are another set of small arms which can be used in the army. So here domestic firms are worried that why not the country give, or the defense ministry give importance to the domestic firms so that they can also be in the fray and they can help and they can also be benefited by this step. And moving on to the next topic, China has crossed its 1960 claims along the LAC. So this article talks about the present scenario of the tussle that is happening between India and China. The India and China are in a border dispute. So China is facing a lot of border disputes, or is having a lot of border disputes, not only with India but several other countries which are sharing international boundary with China. So China, once this COVID has affected the entire globe, many countries have been affected, and it is also facing an internal crisis. The Chinese premier has to address all these shortcomings, and in order to reiterate the presence of the government, or in order to reiterate their ability by preventing the focus of the problem on COVID-19, what China is doing is China is trying to raise several issues, and that's what it is at the same time involving in disputes in multiple arenas. So Indo-China dispute, border dispute, that is in the region of Ladakh, is one of such issues where China wants to direct its concentration or focus from its public from the ongoing pandemic of COVID-19 and direct it towards several other issues where the people can be charged through nationalism. And right now in China, nationalism is soaring, and China has involved in a lot of methods by which it can carry out its impact on several other countries, which include the salami slicing technique. The salami slicing technique has been used by China right now in order to slowly take certain area from India. And other aspect is the wolf warrior diplomacy of China, where China is aggressively replying through its individuals, that is through its foreign ambassadors, who were previously relatively silent and did not respond in an aggressive way. Now moving to this wolf warrior diplomacy, what China is doing is China is responding aggressively on social media too. So this shows that the nationalism in China is soaring, and this is one of the consequences of this China's nationalism. So China is not sticking to what words it has said before. So this article has taken an in-depth view of what China is doing right now. So in 1960, so even before talking about the Indo-China War of 1962, India has been facing a constant threat from China all the way beginning 1957. So because in the time of 1957, China had violated the international boundary between India and China and has entered into Indian territory, and it has laid claim to certain area in the near the Galwan Valley and also near the Pangong Lake. So what happened is later in 1960s they have decided, or they have declared, that they have occupied certain territory, and later in 1962 there was an agreement post Indo-China War, and it led to the foundation or significance or bringing into light about the LAC, that is line of actual control. So line of actual control, we are going to deal about that later, but before that we are going to talk about the article particular. So here you can see Chinese troops are currently present on the northern bank of Pangong Tso Lake in Ladakh, an area which is beyond what China described as official boundary during the talks with India in 1960. So here if you see, in 1960 China has claimed that it has occupied this area and it has laid claim to certain area. And now if you see that where Chinese military, that is the People's Republic Army of China, okay, this People's Republic Army of China is presently stationed more western than what China has put claim in 1960. So they have crossed the LAC, they have moved much deeper to the west, and now the army is stationed there. So here what this article talks about is, if you see this image, this water body is the Pangong Tso Lake, and here you can see this numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 8. These are actually the finger-like projections. They are the mountainous ridges. So they are numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6 and 8, so on. So during 1960, when the talks were there, they have talked about the latitudes, and latitudes were identified till where the Chinese extension is present. But the latitude location was only talked about for degrees, minutes, and it was left vaguely by not talking about the seconds. And so the latitudes are not so perfect. So roughly, vaguely speaking, the extension or the claim at which the China had been claiming had been present till the 8th finger, that is the mountain ridge 8, which is present on the northern aspect of the Pangong Tso Lake. But what happened is, in the present scenario, so as per 1960s, China's claim laid till the finger 8. Then India's claim is till finger 8. So India is going to guard the border till the finger 8 aspect of the ridge, mountain ridge near the Pangong Tso Lake. But what happened is, right now the Chinese have moved their incursions into deep on the western aspect of this finger 8, and they have moved till finger 4. That is the mountainous ridge finger 4, which is present on the northern aspect of the Pangong Tso Lake. So because of this, there is a lot of clashes that have happened between the Indian army and the Chinese army, leading to killing of almost 20 Indian Jawans. And right now they are still stationed near the finger 4. So it is a gross deviation from the talks or from the statements that China had already made during the talks with India in 1960. Though the talks were not fruitful, but there was an engagement, and subsequently there was an agreement that the LAC was agreed upon, and that LAC extended till the 8th finger. But now, as you can see, it is a total violation of what that has been agreed upon. So this article only talks about that aspect, that China has crossed its 1960 claims along the LAC. Now we'll see what is LAC and everything. So here, this is a map of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. So if you see all this here, you can see hot springs, Galwan Valley, okay, and the Pangong Tso Lake. Okay, and this is the line of actual control which is going through the Galwan Valley, hot springs and the Pangong Tso Lake. So here, if you see the image of Pangong Tso Lake, and here you can see the mountainous ridges that are coming on the northern aspect of the Pangong Tso Lake. So here, if you name the ridges, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So these are the fingers, are nothing but mountain ridges that have protruded all the way and are present on the northern bank of Pangong Tso Lake. So the Chinese aggression is not only limited to this Pangong Tso Lake or Galwan Valley. As you can see, this aggression, first one is areas of China's aggression include the Galwan Valley, Pangong Tso Lake, and apart from that, hot springs. All these three territories are present in Ladakh, which is a union territory right now. Then you have another place which is called Nakula, and it's situated in Sikkim. And apart from that, China has been emphasizing that the Tawang district of Arunachal Pradesh is a disputed area and it belongs to China. So this is all about the article. Then moving on, China committing gross abuses against Uyghurs, UK tells. So who are these Uyghurs and what gross abuse is being committed against the Uyghurs? So most Uyghurs are Muslim, and Islam is an important part of their life and identity. So these Uyghurs are the tribal people who are residing in China, and especially majority of the Uyghur population is residing in the Xinjiang province. So here what happens is, most of the Uyghurs are Muslims, and the Communist Party of China is not interested in the welfare of these Uyghurs, and it blames these Uyghurs to be the source of terrorism into the Xinjiang province of China, and China is simply trying to abuse this Uyghur population. And in a sense that if you see the Uyghurs, their language is related to Turkish and they regard themselves as culturally and ethnically close to Central Asian nations. So what UK is telling? So UK on Sunday, that is Britain on Sunday, accused Beijing of gross and egregious human rights abuses. So egregious means extremely bad in a way that is very noticeable. So it is said that the Chinese government is dealing very harshly with the Uyghurs, and wherever there are any protests regarding the harsh behavior of the Chinese authorities with the Uyghurs, the Chinese government is totally crushing the revolt or any protest without giving due consideration. So here not only the Uyghur population but also several other minorities which are residing in China have been dealt very badly. And so UK is just citing this gross violation of human rights both about Uyghurs and also other minorities who are residing in China. And by this, in future what happens is there are chances that certain countries can impose sanctions on China. But China is reiterating that if any country hastily imposes any sanctions on China, they have to deal with the consequences in the later period. So this is about this topic. Then moving on, EU leaders struggle to reach accord. So what are this EU? EU stands for European Union. And what is this European Union? It is a unique economic and political union between 27 European Union countries, means which are present in the continent of Europe, and that together cover much of the continent. And why they have come together is so that they can have economic and political cooperation, and they can have a common free trade area where there is no barrier which is going to prevent the movement of trade and also the movement of individuals from one area to other or one country to other in the European Union. And that union has been formed, and after the beginning of the global pandemic of COVID-19, what happened is different countries have been affected in a different way because of the pandemic, and few countries which are economically stable in the European Union could immediately bounce back and sustain and come back to normalcy. But there are other poorer countries which are already affected economically and they have taken a severe blow and their economic condition is bad. So they wanted to come up, all the countries of the European Union wanted to come out and get a bailout package which could benefit all these countries. But the countries which are advanced, which are economically stable, are trying to impose certain restrictions whenever they want to give this bailout packages. So that is the tussle that is going on between the much economically stable countries of the north like Norway and less stable countries like Greece, where there is a lot of situation, and including Spain where the condition was bad. So this article talks about that EU summit to agree huge COVID-19 economic rescue package was at risk of collapse without a deal on Sunday as the leader struggles to find a common point where the negotiation can be fruitful. Then moving on to the next topic, if you see, before going to that, the predecessor, means even before European Union was formed, there was another body which was the predecessor of EU, which is called European Economic Community, that is EEC, which was formed after the aftermath of the Second World War in 1958. This EEC was later renamed as European Union. Then here, this article in the editorial, it talks about a chance to restore the rule of law. So what is meant by rule of law? So rule of law especially talks about in Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, talks about no one is above the law and the same law is applicable to all individuals. And here you have to understand this article is talking about the rule of law, taking into consideration about the increasing extrajudicial killings, and especially here the incident of the extrajudicial killings of Vikas Dubey. Okay, so the person, he is a wanted culprit of many cases and he was encountered recently, and it is said that the police claim that this Vikas Dubey tried to snatch away the gun from the police and run away and tried to kill few policemen, and then they shot him and they killed him. But whatever the claim may be, but it is nothing but an extrajudicial killing. So what is meant by extrajudicial killing? So you have to understand judicial killing, then you will understand extrajudicial killing. Any killing is a crime. If any individual kills another individual, then it is considered as a homicide or a murder, and the Indian Penal Code provides for due punishment. But what is meant by judicial killing? If a person has committed a crime, then as a punishment there can be death penalty. That is called judicial killing, and if at all he is executed, that will be called a judicial killing. And if the law is not allowed to take its due course, and if people or the executive or the government servant takes law into their hands and they perform the execution of this law, then it is called as extrajudicial killings. And nowadays what is happening, because the police are involved in such a rash manner, more and even people are not having faith in the judicial system, because judiciary can be dealt with or can be purchased at times by the corrupt individuals, and when such scenario occurs, people do not get the required justice in the due time. So with the lack of patience and not able to get the justice, the people are very much happy to involve in the mob lynching. So here lynch mobs and extrajudicial killings these days are being celebrated. So once this Vikas Dubey was encountered and he was killed, not encountered as the police say, but if you go by the extrajudicial killings, once he is killed, there were a lot of people who were happy with the death of Vikas Dubey, because the increasing impatience in the people that the justice cannot be served to them. And here you have to understand that this Vikas Dubey, who was arrested in the sense is he himself surrendered to the police, and once he surrendered to the police, what is the need for him to run away? And the second point is, once he is arrested, why there aren't any handcuffs to his hands? And if he was really handcuffed, could he really pick a gun and run away from the police into an open field? And he was shot through his chest, and if the police were really trying to save themselves, do you think that they would fire exactly to his chest? So all this are really a conspiracy, no one knows. So here what the Supreme Court finds is, in 2014 the Supreme Court of India has in its judgments with PUCL versus the state of Maharashtra has laid down 16 guidelines to be followed when it came to investigating encounter killings by the police. So here in this article he clearly gives, that is the People's Union for Civil Liberties, PUCL stands for People's Union for Civil Liberties versus the state of Maharashtra. So this judgment, in this judgment, the Supreme Court has noted that whatever encounter killings are there, they are nothing but having criminal philosophy. So this is a criminal act. So at the same time, the police should not take law into their hands. They should not deliver the justice. Their responsibility is to be the guardians of what responsibility they have been given to. And so to minimize the police excesses, there were different types of guidelines that were made by the government, and even there was a law that is still in the bill stage in order to prevent such killings. And even the Supreme Court and NHRC, that is National Human Rights Commission, has given out a set of guidelines. If at all an individual is encountered, or if it is said as an extrajudicial killing, the autopsy should be recorded and all data should be collected and stored, so that in future action can be taken. And these people who actually are involved in these sorts of extrajudicial killings should be brought before justice. That is what this article talks about. Then moving on to next topic. So why a separate anti-torture law? So you can see that the incident in Tamil Nadu where a father and son had died in custody. So this was allegedly because of the torture that was meted to them by the police. And so in view of that scenario, do we need an anti-torture law, or do we already have certain laws in place which will protect the people from being tortured by the police? That is this article about. So to begin with, India has signed the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman and Degrading Treatment or punishment on October 14, 1997. So this international convention is against torture and other cruel treatment to the people who are arrested or in police custody. And this law has been signed by India, but it has not been ratified yet. So what is the difference between signing a convention and ratifying a convention? Simply signing a convention is showing the desire or intent that we are willing to join that convention. Ratifying it, once signing is done, then what will happen is that country, in that country, whatever assembly is there, that is, if you talk about the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha in India, in the parliament it has to be presented as a bill and it has to be passed. Once it has passed and received the signature or assent of the president, then the convention is said to be ratified by the country. So simply the Prime Minister or President of India has signed the convention, in the sense is shown interest to join that convention, but ratification of that convention has not been done by India yet. And what happens is, though it is a signatory, but because we have not ratified, there is no strong action that is taken by India in order to be in line with this any anti-torture law. But in the year of 2017, what happened is a bill was tabled, which was earlier tabled in the year 2010, which is called the Prevention of Torture Bill. So what is this Prevention of Torture Bill? This Prevention of Torture Bill takes into consideration about if at all a public servant is involved in torture, whether it be physical or mental, and there are consequences for such torture if it is not done as per the legal limit. If there are any police excesses in this, then the individual can also be given death penalty. So here what should be done is, so here the National Human Rights Commission will come into force. It has laid down specific guidelines for conducting autopsy under the eyes of camera if at all the individual dies in the police custody. And the Supreme Court, in its judgment of D.K. Basu and State of West Bengal, is the turning point in case of how the custodial torture, what jurisprudence should be taken out on the custodial torture. And in the court's decision in Nilabati Behera versus the state of Orissa, it made sure that the state could not move away by telling that it doesn't have any liability to pay compensation to the victim's family. So definitely, if at all there is a custodial death because of the custodial torture that is happening, then the respective government is liable to pay the compensation to the victim. So how can you do away with this torture in the custody? So here, if you talk about the Prevention of the Torture Bill, here you can see the bill seeks to provide for punishment of torture inflicted by public servants. It states that if a public servant acts in a way that causes grievous hurt or a person or endangers the life, limb and health of the person in order to obtain information or a confession, the act shall be termed as torture. So ideally speaking, if you talk about the IPC or the Indian Constitution, neither of them does provide the definition of torture. So there is no clear-cut idea of what will come under torture. There are certain instances where prolonged interrogation has been termed as torture, but there is no clear-cut documentation of what torture includes. But rather, the IPC talks about hurt and grievous hurt. It has given definitions for them. So, but we still do not know what constitutes torture and what doesn't. So here, the police may involve in torture, that is third degree treatment to the criminals, in order to get confessions from their mouth or to get information from these individuals. But that is good for the society. But at the same time, if this type of custodial torture is carried out which is against the human rights of individuals, so there is a fine line that has to be maintained between the treatment and the torture. And here this article, it also talks about that if at all this bill is passed, that is the Protection of Torture Bill. So if you talk about the incident of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. So this act was passed so that the army or the police personnel can effectively involve their actions, can take measures, can arrest anyone in areas which are considered as disturbed areas by the notification of Ministry of Home Affairs. So especially in the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir and in Manipur and several other states which were considered as disturbed areas, the Armed Forces Special Power Acts have given several powers to this armed personnel so that their actions will not be questioned later. But what happened is, because of this, there were a lot of police or armed personnel excesses. There were complaints that they have killed people without a reason. There were complaints that they have raped many women, and that led to the agitation by Irom Sharmila Chanu, who is considered as the Iron Lady of Manipur. And because taking all this into consideration, you have to understand that, but still, even though they have asked that Armed Forces Special Power Act should be repealed, but yet that is still in place in many areas in the country. That is because the people who are trying to act against the government, or people who are trying to disrupt the harmony in the country, should be dealt with. In the same time, here there may be criminals and they should be dealt with. And when criminals are there and they should be dealt with, if at all you are putting restrictions on the police personnel that their actions will be later judged, and in such scenario the police personnel will not be in a condition to carry out their duty on a normal basis, so they have to come under constant fear. In such scenarios, so if at all this bill is passed, the Prevention of Torture bill, what happens is they will be liable to all their actions. So they, if at all they involve in certain treatment of the individual in the custody, and that individual dies by accident or by their treatment, there are chances that death penalty can be issued to those individuals. So if you put and gauge the benefits of having a certain new law, that is the reason why this is still in the form of a bill and it has not been passed, and a lot of dissolutions of the parliament has, that is especially the Lok Sabha has done, and a newer bill was presented in 2017 and it has been passed by Lok Sabha and it is still pending in Rajya Sabha. So ideally what this article talks about, taking all these things into consideration, the most important thing is the root cause of the problem should be addressed. And what is the root cause? Proper investigation of the thing and proper addressal and proper prosecutions, that is fair prosecution, should be given to the individuals. Then moving on to the next topic, make the right call on the Malabar going quad. So what is this Malabar and what is going quad? So Malabar is presently a trilateral exercise, that is, it is an exercise, naval exercise, that is happening between the navy of three countries, which is India, US and Japan. And now they are planning that they are going to make this trilateral exercise into a quadrilateral exercise by joining Australia into this naval exercise. But what this article talks about is, it says make the right call. So here we have to see whether allowing Australia to join into this naval exercise is the right call, or delaying this process for a further next date is right call. That is what this article takes a view or look into. So this article talks about, in the present scenario of discrepancies or disturbances, border disturbances between India and China, where India and China are trying to de-escalate, and especially this naval exercise, which usually happens in the Indian Ocean region and the Pacific Ocean region, where China has a lot of interest. And if at all India now allows Australia to enter into this exercise, it will embolden China so that it can also carry out another, or it can open up another front of conflict between India in the Indian Ocean region. So it is said that China has been moving into the Indian Ocean region, all very close to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So here what happens is, already this, if you take a look about the Malabar exercise, it is an annual trilateral naval exercise between the navies of India, USA and Japan, and it is held alternatively in the Indian and Pacific Ocean. So to begin with, this Malabar exercise was initially started as a bilateral exercise between India and US. If we see, it began in around 1992, and in 2015 it was joined by Japan. And now in 2020 they are planning that Australia has shown its interest and it has already been at an observer status in the Malabar exercise. Now there is a question whether India is going to plan to allow or bring in Australia into this exercise. So already China is not so happy with Australia. So recently, if you have happened to come across in the news, Australia had asked that an open public investigation be carried on China in regard to China's response to coronavirus in containing this virus from turning out to be a pandemic. So the relations between China and Australia are not so good, and by India allowing Australia into this quadrilateral exercise is going to definitely harm the sentiments or the feelings of China, and China, rather than de-escalating the issue, may start to escalate and open a new front of conflict with India. And if you see the members who are already participants of this exercise, that is USA and Japan, are interested in carrying out this Malabar exercise, so in order to check the growing sphere of influence of China in the Pacific Ocean and also restrict its movement in the South China Sea. But is there any benefit to India in that by allowing Australia to join? So in a temporary point of view, there may be a benefit in the sense of new type of equipment, that is weaponry may be received by India. But on a long term sense, if you see, China has a strong naval presence in the Pacific Ocean, and if you see US and Japan, they still do not have such a greater presence in these areas when compared with China. And if you do allow Australia also may have to significantly beef up or increase its naval power. So right now, if you see, India allowing Australia may be a little bit troublesome. We don't know how China is going to react. If China is going to react in an aggressive way, as we know, as we have already discussed about the wolf warrior diplomacy, which is named after a movie that is released in China, which is called Wolf Warrior, where the hero or the protagonist is a patriot and works in order to save his country. So if the Chinese feel that they are under the threat, and already we have a problem in Ladakh and even in Sikkim at multiple points, including the Galwan Valley, Pangong Tso Lake, the hot springs and the Nakula, and newer front can be opened in the ocean also. So India should weigh what is good and what is bad and should take decision. It should not go hastily, and these countries which are already participants of this exercise are not going to benefit India in the immediate time. So a wait and watch approach would be good. So with this, we complete all the aspects of the main topics or essential aspects of the today's newspaper. Thank you. You can subscribe to our channel so that you can get the fresh content, and do watch for our daily Hindu newspaper updates. Thank you.